What's up, guys? So today we're going to be doing a reaction video to Daniel's UFL An Honest Review. This is a guy who I've been watching for a while now. He's someone who just has a really good opinion on football games, in my opinion, but he is more of a FIFA focused channel, and I feel like a lot of the eFootball or PES guys that watch me wouldn't be aware of any of his videos. So I kind of want to react to his thoughts on UFL, which is a game that some of the audience here kind of have been interested in, and I want to give his perspective on the UFL and also mine as well alongside that, because recently, while UFL, a lot of people have been interested in it, I think people's kind of opinions are starting to sour on the game, unfortunately. So let's just dive right into it and see what he has to say.
I feel as though the FIFA community has been screaming for a competitor for years now, probably for at least a decade, since PES or eFootball has fallen off a cliff, and finally...
Alright, well, first off, I don't think PES or eFootball has fallen off a cliff in terms of the amount of money Konami are making. It's definitely I think it is one of the most successful mobile games. I think it's in the top 5 all the time, and they're definitely making a lot more money on eFootball compared to PES. But Daniel, sorry, his name's a bit of a mouthful, kind of wouldn't really care about that. He's more interested in gameplay, which he obviously should be. But it is interesting to see that, you know, while PES has lost a lot of respect in recent years, especially from people who are on console, it's actually resulted in them making a lot more money. So just something to touch there, but yeah, he's kind of true for the most part.
UFL. Now, is it the most polished game to ever come out?
No.
No, not really. Is it going to tank EA's sales and take over the video game football scene? I really doubt it, but...
Yeah, definitely not. It's not going to challenge EA at all. If anything, eFootball is the only game that's going to be threatened by UFL, because EAFC is kind of more of a premium product. You pay full price for it, you get all the licenses, you get daily content at 6 p.m. And whereas eFootball is the other free-to-play alternative, and it's a lot more bare bones. So UFL is obviously always going to be competing with eFootball and not with EAFC. But it is interesting. UFL has definitely built their gameplay off of EA's model. Like, if you play UFL, you would think you're playing FIFA from, I don't know, 10 years ago, maybe FIFA 14, FIFA 15. It definitely feels like it's based off of that, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. People did like those games back then, so I mean, we should go back to those roots. Just because it feels a bit older doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, but we'll see throughout the video there is kind of, you know, some differences between what UFL is today and those FIFA games were back in the day.
Is it something worth trying and putting a little bit of time into? UFL is the new free-to-play football game on the market that's trying to wiggle its way into the houses of football fans everywhere, because FC25, most notably Ultimate Team, is ruining people's mental health.
I get paid to play video games, and I'm doing Kawhi Leonard load f***ing management.
There's no manager mode in UFL, there's no player career, there's no pro clubs, it's just play now and their version of Ultimate Team, which is My Club. Now this is a...
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to mention this too, but I don't think that's a problem. I mean, the market is clearly, you know, said, we want Ultimate Team, we want online, we don't really care about career mode and stuff. And I know there are a lot of people, especially in eFootball, who are saying we need Master League, we need Master League, but it doesn't really matter how many people want it in comparison to how much money they're willing to pay for it. There's a clear reason why Ultimate Team is the main mode in FIFA, it's the main mode in eFootball, and it's the main mode in UFL. Like, PES was kind of late to get an Ultimate Team mode. They used to have Master League Online up until PES 14. And then when they went on to the PS4 generation of consoles, they released My Club. And then pretty soon that became the main focus. I would say by PES 17 or even PES 16, it was really clear this is the main focus. And then they took another leap in PES 19 by adding special cards and stuff. So it was pretty bare bones to start their My Club version, but it was definitely where they were making most of their money. And you can clearly see with their strategy with eFootball getting rid of all the offline modes and just focusing purely on Dream Team or My Club. What's it called? Is it Dream Team or My Club? Actually, it's Dream Team now. It was My Club back in the day, isn't it? Yeah, so there's clear focus. So I guess UFL have come out and said they have, you know, considerations to release a manager mode or a player career mode. It's just not going to happen. They're only saying that because they're just, you know, very communicative, and they're always talking to or giving feedback, responding to feedback on social media. They're just saying that just to kind of keep people stringing along. They really don't have any intentions of releasing any of them modes. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money on that, because it's, I mean, unless they're going to sell it as a package where you have to pay, I don't know, €20 to get access to career mode, but even then I don't think that would be worth their time, really.
It's a pretty cut and dry video game with basically no game modes besides the competitive ranked matches associated with My Club. But if that's what you're into, then who am I to take that away? Especially when some of the features in my club are infinitely better than some of the things that you can find in FC25. One of them is this upgrading system that allows cards to become better and better the more you play with them, which, believe it or not, is actually something that's very common in other video games, so much so that it's probably more rare for a game to not have that feature, which makes sense for FC25 as it's made by these guys. I mean,
yeah, well, this actually used to be, well, it's still in eFootball, but it really isn't because of how easy it is to get XP, and there's actually no incentive to level up your players. But back in PES, every player used to give a overall to start with. So Messi would probably start off at about an 83 overall back in like PES 15, and you could level him up, say 20 levels. And then it would actually take a while to level them up. Like you'd spend a good while leveling them up, and it was fun. It was fun building the team that way. You didn't get to choose how your stats were built like in eFootball. So in eFootball, you can say we're going to focus on leveling up their shooting or their dribbling. You had to follow a strict path. And it's kind of similar in UFL. I think the stats upgrade by a strict path in UFL. But you definitely can pick skills to put on the players after you get levels. But PES back in the day used to also have this system, but different players had different level caps. So young players actually had really high level caps, and you could get, I remember I can't remember if it was Vinicius Jr. or Rodrigo when they played in Brazil, but I bought him as a bronze player. He would have started off at 60 overall and leveled him up throughout the whole year. And by the end of it, he was like 90 rated or 91, 92, whatever. And he was as good as the, Messi's, Neymar, Ronaldo, those type of players. So there was a real sense of like progression in using your team. UFL does kind of have that, and I actually think, as this guy's saying here, it is a good benefit. EA don't really have it. They have evolutions, but you kind of don't have much freedom in the evolutions, which isn't necessarily an issue. I actually do think the system is good, but it's not as kind of free as UFL or PES used to have back in the day, where you could pick a young player, and if you put the time and effort in, get them as good as the top players that are in the game.
Hell, even the bench players get XP, even when they don't play. Imagine getting rewards just by playing the game, no matter the result.
Actually, one thing I wanted to say,
don't play.
I had a feeling, see the XP bars, his have different numbers in each player, where when I was playing it, each player had the same amount of XP. I think it might be based off position, but you can see there's only about 3 numbers there, which is one thing I didn't like. Back in PES, your player's performance mattered how much XP they got. So if you scored a hat-trick with a player, they were getting a lot more XP than someone, the left back who didn't do anything, which I really liked. So I guess that's something they could improve with UFL. Your match rating impacts on how much XP you get, but it is a small issue. But I do think, again, it kind of adds more attachments to the leveling up process.
Imagine getting rewards just by playing the game, no matter the result. Now granted, it does take a while for players to get upgraded stats and attributes, especially when they get higher overalls. But this is something that could easily be adjusted, so it's a good feature nonetheless. Now there's also an open market for cards and players that you can buy rather than gamble SBCs or ripping open random packs hoping to get something good. Although users can spend money on getting skins which can make a player slightly better, so it's not as if Strikers Inc. is that much morally superior. Now the one
I would disagree with him on this point. There is going to be a later point about the monetization where I don't think they are as innocent, but I think those skins they're not major. I think they're kind of just like chem styles. Now I wish chem styles weren't in FIFA. I wish you had to use players based on their stats instead of adding on a card. But those skins don't actually improve your players massively, so I wouldn't even like consider that pay to win really. Even if you could only get them with money, it's gonna be +5s, if maybe, or +10s, and it's again, they aren't pay to win. Like, you can get them for free. So I disagree with him on that point, but we'll see later talking about pay to win more in general.
One upside to these microtransactions is that if you do spend money on them to go after a player, you'll know exactly how much you need for that specific player, meaning you won't feel ripped off afterwards. At least you would know how much to spend if the game didn't have the stupidest in-game currency I have ever seen in my life. Why?
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how many currencies there are, but there are a lot of different ones. The 2 main ones though are the CP and the RP. What he said there about, you spend your money and you know how much you're going to spend. I agree. Like, I think spending money on FIFA points is the biggest, I don't know, it's crazy to me. I've never had the urge to spend money on FIFA points in the last, 5 years, really, just because it's such a gamble and the odds are so bad. At least in here, you can look at a player and go, okay, I want to buy him. fair enough, you get them. eFootball, you can argue it has that system. You can argue it has gambling. In eFootball, each pack has a certain amount of players, and then once you open enough, do enough of them packs, you clear the player and get all of them. So you could, in theory, know I need at least €200 to guarantee a player. But you could get lucky in eFootball. I think when you're talking about adults playing a game, I don't think eFootball system you can really fault, because essentially you're saying the players are worth €150 or €250 at that recent Bale pack, which I'm not happy about. And you could get lucky and get them earlier, but when these games are targeted towards children and the PEGI age is like 3, I think then in eFootball specifically, it does become an issue of like, all right, this is gambling, because a child isn't going to know, or they will know, but they won't have the kind of discipline to kind of sit here and realize, yeah, this will probably in all likelihood cost you, upwards of 90% of the value of the pack to get your player you want. They're going to try and take their chance with their coins. And I see it in the comments of all my videos, people saying, oh, I saved up this amount of coins and then I didn't get a player, and they're upset. And I'm like, why are you upset? You knew what the odds were. This is a casino. If you're going to play it like that, if you're going to add the money and clear the pack, it's not really a casino in that sense. Then again, some of these guys could be kids, they could be children, and they just don't really have the mental capacity to say like that. The house wins. The house always wins. So I guess that is the downside of eFootball.
Who is that for? So you got credits, which can help you buy players off the market and get some cosmetic stuff. You got reputation, which also buys you players and can be taken away from you, I guess. But you have to use credits and reputation together to get players. Otherwise, you might as well just jump off a bridge. You got showdown tokens.
Yeah, just so to elaborate on that point for people that haven't played UFL, you'll be given a certain amount of RP, and then you will be given your credits for playing the game. If you're in Division 6, for example, you'll only have a certain amount of RP, let's say 100,000, and then let's say you went onto the market with your credit card, bought the CP to buy Messi, Bellingham, and Ronaldo. They might be 50,000 RP each, so when you try to put them into your team, you're only going to be able to fit 2 of them into your team. So you can go out and buy all the players, but you won't be able to fit all of them into your team, and you get more RP by promoting and just playing more of the game in general. You can't go and buy a God Squad day 1, but I don't think it really matters, because the RP cap isn't easily reached if you're a free-to-play player playing the game, grinding. Like you won't get to the point as a free-to-play player where you're capped by RP. So the difference between someone who spends and someone who doesn't spend is still going to be large. But I guess it's not completely, God Squad team from day 1. But it might as well be if you're talking about the difference between your team and the opponent's team.
For showdown events, that at least makes sense. You have league points, which give you skins that can slightly increase a player's stats, and you got star points for the season pass. I swear to God there aren't this many Oreo varieties. Now the credits and the reputation are the 2 most important types of currency, because these are the only ones that actually allow you to get players. But the problem is, you need an ungodly amount of these 2 types of currency, because you only get about a nickel and a handful of beans after each game. Oh man, what a hard-fought game. 3-3? What a great match. And I got a lot of players' stats upgraded. That's fantastic. How many credits am I gonna... Okay, well, me, I guess. At the moment, Bellingham costs 200...
And I don't know if he's going to mention it, but you have to pay for your player's stamina to regenerate after each game. So you're going to wipe off another... That 500,000 he made, you're going to wipe off another probably 200,000 for stamina. Now, when I was playing, I was making about 1.2 million per game. But I don't know if that's because maybe it was a higher division than where that clip was drawn from. But also, I bought the early access edition. I think I was getting a booster or something. So yeah, the grind is very hard before you even consider the fact that you have to recharge your player's stamina. And players are so expensive at the low end. That's not just the high end players that are expensive, it's the low end players too. That if you think, okay, maybe I'll just rotate my squad then and I won't use the stamina. But it's like, there's no point buying the cheap players to rotate and save on stamina, because if you wanted to grind for a top player, it might take, let's just put an example out there, 200 games to get a top player. It would probably take 60 or 70 to get a mid-level player that you would, put on the bench. And that's just not going to, in the long run, make sense to put 5 or 6 of them in your substitutes and rotate your squad.
151 million credits. You get about 550,000 credits per match, maybe a little more with some boosts from the season pass. So just to afford Bellingham, you need to play 456 matches.
Alright, my maths is a bit off on that. On his calculation with the 500,000, I was going off on the 1.2 million I was making. But yeah, it's the same point anyway. At that point, it doesn't really matter if it's 200 or 500 matches. I don't actually really have an issue with a really long grind to get a top player like that. But the main issue I have is when you sell a player, you only get, I don't know what the number is. It might be like 40% of the money back that you spent on them, which is ridiculous to me because, again, it incentivizes you not to upgrade your team if you're a free-to-play player. Incentivizes you not to upgrade your team until you reach the amount where you can buy a top player. Because if you're buying players along the way, when you eventually want to upgrade them, it's going to take way longer for now for you because you're making purchases along the way, but also you're not going to get much of your money back. One thing that I like about FIFA is with the market, you can buy and sell players, and you can try. Like I just tried out George Best for about 6 games during the day. Didn't like him, sold him. Actually sold him at a profit, which doesn't really matter. But the fact that I could, invest my coins in him, try him out, and sell him again was really good. In UFL, you don't have that option. If you buy a player, you better be sure you're gonna like him because you're gonna be stuck with him, and it's gonna be a long while before you can get another player after that as well.
But you know what? That's the most expensive card in the game, right? Of course it's going to be tough to get him. I get that. What about a squad of, I don't know, 81 overalls? I mean, there's some decent players in here, right? Delit, Ake, Cunha, definitely playable. Now, these guys go for about 50 million credits, so a full squad of these 81 overalls would be about 550 million. So just to get a squad of halfway decent cards, not even superstars, you need to play about 1,000 matches. 1,000 matches.
Or you can get your credit card out. That's literally the thing, and it's funny because the branding of this game was fair to play, and I mean that doesn't sound very fair to me if I'm being honest. And I don't have a problem with this system. I don't have a problem with pay to win. Like I think that's how a football game is gonna have to be monetized. It's just when they were marketing as a fair to play game, it's like it's very dishonest, and it's I don't know. I remember talking to Gianni before this game came out, and he was saying like. I was like, it's going to be paid to win. It has to be. It's either going to be paid to win or it's going to fail miserably. And he was saying, no, I think like I'd pay money for boots and stuff and cosmetics. And I'm like, no one's going to do that. Like, it's a football game. No one cares about, the boots really. Not enough to make enough money back on the game that it costs to develop it. So it was always going to be paid to win. And I don't know, I just think their marketing was very dishonest.
We'll let you play with Thomas Souček. Now, what I will say is that even though these credits can be bought with real money, which is ironic considering that it's fair to play, this gets evened out with the whole reputation currency. So even if you can buy billions of credits, you will need to play matches for reputation. And something else is that how many credits players will be worth, or how many credits one can earn on a regular basis, can be changed pretty easily. And given that UFL seems pretty concerned about listening and responding to player feedback, it's not something that I'm too worried about. So you got a few cool features that aren't found in FC25, as well as a lack of predatory gambling practices, but beyond that there's not too many features, which means the game will heavily rely on its gameplay, something I really respect because the gameplay will always be the most important part. But it's
True. I mean, I like FIFA. I probably play more FIFA than I do eFootball at the moment, but eFootball has like no content but the gameplay for me anyway. I know this guy doesn't really seem to think so, but I think the gameplay is really good, and it just playing divisions matches is fun. Whereas FIFA has the gameplay loops and the reward systems that keep me engaged. If it didn't have that, I wouldn't like FIFA. I wouldn't play it. But gameplay is king, so that's kind of the selling point for me for UFL is alright. They're gonna just focus on gameplay, but I'm sure he's gonna talk about now the gameplay and why it's not as good as it probably should be, or it's a real disappointment because if they're not gonna be as polished as FIFA or eFootball, you'd hope that they have some of the fundamentals more in check.
a good thing that it costs about $0 because yeah, it's not that great. Now I get that this is UFL's first year on the market, and obviously changes can come, and I get that. But some of the initial choices do not make sense to me. I don't know what it is with sports games nowadays, especially when it comes to football games, but everything...
I mean, actually, let me go back to this, though. He's highlighting this interception as a problem,
initial choices do not make sense.
The clip before.
Now I get dollars.
He's highlighting this interception as a problem. I don't really see the problem with that. Who's his DMF? It's someone really low rated, and his opponent isn't controlling that player. So the fact, like, I'm not saying that this should never get intercepted, but it shouldn't be something that you use as one highlight clip to highlight as the fact that this didn't get intercepted is a major problem. I mean, you're not controlling the player. I feel like if he is controlling the player, he should pretty much always intercept, like, 99% of the time. But because he's not controlling the player, I think it should go through, especially if they're low rated. If they're high rated, I guess maybe you could have an issue. Even then, I wouldn't have a major issue though, especially because it's an aerial ball. You can understand. But look, I'm nitpicking there. In general, I do think there are gameplay issues, which you'll talk further about in a sec.
Changes can come, and I get that. But some of the initial choices do not make sense to me. I don't know what it is with sports games nowadays, especially when it comes to football games, but everything is just so slow. I mean, for God's sake, you got people out here making FC25 look like Sonic. Me. Look at this gameplay.
So true, like this UFL and EAFC are just very slow, but UFL is surprisingly, as you say, it's slower. It's way more unresponsive, and it's very shocking. And it doesn't seem to be a case of the players are low rated. And obviously, if you get high rated players, it does become more responsive, but not near enough that it should be. Like I did say in the betas and the alphas, UFL made a major mistake, releasing the alphas in the way they were, and giving everyone starter teams that were 60 rated, because a lot of the slowness at the start with the very low rated players is due to the rating. So people were picking up and going, "This is terrible. Like I can't even move my player." I was like, well, yeah, if you got an 80 rated player, at least it would be a little bit more responsive. So I think they did make a very bad first impression in that regard. But even then, when you get the higher rated players, it's just not responsive enough. And it does feel like he's comparing it here. I think this is FIFA 14. Yeah, it is FIFA 14. He's comparing it here. Like, it does feel like FIFA 14, but just not as responsive.
FIFA 14. The attacker
like,
is
look,
able to bring the through ball down,
yeah, exactly,
immediately get it under control, and just start sprinting. None of this animation stuff where they take 5 years to take a touch, another 5 years to control it, then another 5 years to start sprinting.
Like, you would need, if that was FIFA, you would need, like, first touch on goal, probably rapid, or with quick step, whichever one's the one for dribbling on goal as well, to get that type of animation, and you'd be lucky to. In eFootball, you won't be able to take the ball in like that either. I do think eFootball is very responsive. It's just certain areas of the game they just don't have responsiveness, like when the ball's played in the air. But like if you just have the ball at your feet in eFootball and you're dribbling, or you're doing quick passing, it is very responsive. I think eFootball has a similar issue in the sense that they won't let your players control the ball without like the necessary animations. Am I making sense there? What I'm trying to say is, in FIFA 14 or the games back in the day, they were more concerned about responsiveness and less concerned about the animations and the aesthetic. Like, just because the standards were different at the time, I think. Like people understood it was a video game. They didn't have to look exactly realistic. So they were happy to have the ball kind of like, kind of go through your player's foot, or just being able to kind of, fall over and keep going. Whereas nowadays they're more concerned about it looking realistic if you were to watch it, and it gets in the way of a responsive gameplay experience.
They just go. Keep in mind, this isn't some god tier player. This is Valbuena taking a touch, a card with above average dribbling. So
yeah, and like back then, I used to play with a silver team or a bronze team in Division 1 and win it, and I was probably 10 or 11 years old. Like I know Division 1 back then wasn't as hard as it is now for a couple of reasons. Just the matchmaking wasn't as strict, and I just think people were just more casual in every single game back then. I mean, if you look at Fortnite, when Fortnite first came out, it was pretty easy if you were if you were someone who just played video games regularly, you would easy to get wins. Every time you played, or maybe every 2 nights you played, you get at least one win, and that, like, if you were good at the game, you were winning. You were expecting to win every game. But when you play it now, and this happened with PUBG as well, people are more hardcore nowadays, and I think it's the same with FIFA. So I don't think if I went back and played FIFA 14, sorry, my dad interrupted me. What I was trying to say is, back then, FIFA 14 and the old FIFAs, a low-rated team would be good against a high-rated team, just because the gameplay fundamentals were a lot more skill-based and less reliant on stats. Like, people used to never use players like Xavi or Iniesta because their passing stats were very high, and that was kind of their main benefit. But the passing stat didn't matter, because if you played a pass that made sense, it would just work regardless of the player. Whereas all the football games recently have pushed into the mindset that stats are king. Same with defenders, by the way, and strikers, actually. It was all about pace back then. You didn't need good shooting or good defending stats. You just needed pace, because the game would just work. When you press tackle, it would tackle. The games have all moved into well, especially FIFA. I think eFootball is not as hardcore as that in terms of relying on stats, but FIFA definitely is. You need all the stats, which there are benefits to that and negatives, but it does result in a less skill-based experience, because if a action is more dependent on the stats of the card that is doing the action rather than the decision to perform that action by the player, it means the skill gap is lessened and you're relying on the game assisting you more. But my point was, back then I could go in Division 1 and, pretty much dominate all the games with a silver team. Whereas if I played now FIFA 14 gameplay with the current player base, I don't think I'd be as dominant, but I would still be able to compete and probably win about half of my games at least. Whereas nowadays, you definitely need on these newer games to be a very strong player, and also you need the very strong cards as well to compete. UFL in theory should be more reliant on your skill, and you don't need the extremely high rated team. And I definitely think it is, compared to FIFA, the case where you can get a lot further with a lower team on UFL and FIFA, but I don't think they've committed to it enough, and they have kind of, along with the broken mechanics like crossing, all these diagonal long through balls, the kind of weird crazy ping pong passes you can do that are off balance 360 degrees, it just means that you can kind of get away with doing less skill-based things and relying on the overall of your cards than it should be, especially compared to the games back in the past.
So how does this compare to the players in UFL? Yes, FC25
I mean,
does...
those are low-rated players, but it wouldn't be extremely faster with the higher-rated players. And again, it goes back to the point, it doesn't matter. It should be a game that is more reliant on your skill rather than the players you have, and I guess monetization-wise, that doesn't make sense, and it's kind of why UFL made the decisions they have. But again, if you get to the high-rated players, it doesn't get too much better, unfortunately.
But again, I'm asking, why do all of these developers think that this is a fun and good idea? And again, I know what you're thinking. Oh, what if the player's ability and stats play a role in this? Well, it is true that starting out, you start with a team that only a mother can love, and it does affect some of the players in a certain case. But I tried some play now with some better players to see if that was, in fact, the only thing affecting it. You want to know how that went? This team had a bunch of players 81 overall or higher, the same players I talked about before that would take 1,000 matches to earn. And I want to make it clear, the connection was not the issue here. In fact, UFL had a clean connection where I was getting consistent gameplay pretty much 99 to 100% of the time. There's a difference between a game that's just inherently slow like UFL and a game that has inconsistent gameplay like FC25. However, when the game speed is so slow that my own inputs are being delayed because the players have to go through their own animation, you might as well have input delay. Now, while the speed of the game is definitely my biggest problem, there are a few other smaller issues as well. For example, there can be an element of randomness in the game that I wish was taken out, like my opponent not being able to make this simple 1v1, but me being able to hit this volley from a tight angle. Through balls can be...
yeah, I don't know about the 1v1 example he's used, but it's particularly these examples here, the rebounds are really annoying. I just think a video game, or football video game, should just prioritize either the shot goes in, or if it does get saved, it doesn't result in a rebound. And the reason for that is, if that header had went in at the start, I don't think this guy would be complaining really. He would have said, okay, I can see the header. But it does become frustrating when the header is saved and then he gets to tap in afterwards. Like, in order for my own mental health, usually when I can see the rebound, I just assume, well, he would have scored, or he should have probably scored the first shot anyway, so I can't be really too upset about the rebound. But it does result in certain scenarios where your opponent can just rely on trying to get rebound shot goals, so they'll take a shot from a stupid angle just to get a rebound. And that's really frustrating to play, because I'm someone who wants to have as much control as possible in the game, and I don't want to rely on rebounds. So it can result in lopsided results compared to the performance on the pitch.
Out, like my opponent not being able to make this simple 1v1.
But yeah, I don't have necessarily an issue with that 1v1 not going in, but I do understand it is kind of main point. I do think this game has an imbalance with the quality of goals that can be scored.
But me being able to hit this volley from a tight angle. Through balls can be a bit odd as well, because sometimes they are picture perfect gorgeous and I absolutely love it, while other times it makes me die inside. I have full power for my pass. Why does it not go to the left winger here?
Okay, I'll tell you why it doesn't, and it's very stupid. UFL does not have any pass assist settings. Everyone's on the same pass assistance. And the problem is, it doesn't really matter how much power you put in the pass. It's all relying on where you're aiming it. So when he has Benassir here and he's trying to play it into the space to his left wing, I don't know if you can see my mouse cursor, but he's going to be aiming about here. And if you just put a straight line from out there, who's the closest player to that? It's going to be this guy here. It's not going to understand that you're trying to play it into this space. It's just going to play it to Benassir because it doesn't matter about the power. If he wanted to play the pass to the left wing, he would actually have to aim up here. And it's just such an unintuitive experience. And I understand, like, it might have been a bit difficult to kind of code this logic to understand with the weight of the pass, who you want to aim at when they first made the game. I understand that it could be a bit complicated, but in terms of when it gets released, this should have been solved. Like, you can't release the game like this in this state where you can't even play the pass intuitively to a player in space because there's another teammate ahead of them. So that is the reason. Just in case anyone who's playing UFL and is curious why their passing is so inconsistent, that's the reason. But it shouldn't be this way anyway. Because there's also actually another point. If you did want to play it to that left winger with the way I'm saying, and it would work, you just aim up here. It's actually going to change your body orientation. So or it could do. So it could be a case of where you start aiming or you start dribbling up this way, facing that direction. And now your body doesn't make sense the way you have your body open to play this pass. Now you'd have to play a different pass. So it's just the pass system. It's just ridiculously bad this game, and I thought eFootball was bad.
Why does it not go to the left winger here? On the other hand, people can do plays like this, and it's just oh my god. Look, UFL has some genuine potential. All right, it's clear that we are all crying out for a better football.
I disagree with that. I don't think saying UFL has genuine potential is a very fair statement. I think that's a bit of cope, and it's just a case of we all want it to have potential, but realistically, what they've shown, and I said it after the second beta, it's just they just don't seem to have the right idea, man. If you go on the subreddit, all you see is complaining about AI defending. Like the community think that the developers have increased the AI defending. I don't know. I don't believe it. But regardless of if it's been increased or not, it does show an underlying issue with the fundamental of the gameplay that it doesn't seem to be responsive, one, which is discussed here, and two, it doesn't seem to really care about rewarding the skillful player as much as it should be, because I think they're trying to capture too big of an audience that the niche really is appropriate for. I just think they're trying to capture that FIFA audience, and it's just not a good idea because FIFA already has their audience. They already have all the licenses. They already have all the game modes, all the kind of brand loyalty in a sense. Like, I know FIFA players don't claim to like FIFA, but they really do. They can't stop playing it. If UFL wants to carve itself a place in this market, they need to really cater to the more hardcore and competitive minded players, but there's not enough money in that. Like, I understand there's not enough money in that. You can't make enough, especially with the amount of money that went into developing this game. You can't make there's not a big enough audience to sell to that type of audience, especially with the fact that if they're competitive minded, they're not going to want pay to win as much. Like, they're going to really want that reeled in. So then it just kind of circles back to a video I made a few months ago. Why does this game exist? I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. And it's a shame. Like, a lot of work went into it. I don't doubt that, but it just seems like it's a very confused business idea. And I think they just took on too much investment and they have to get a return for those investors, but the market is just not there for it, really.
Game, and this company really wants to give it to us. There's some features that UFL has that are not in FC25. There's not a pay-to-win component or a gambling aspect, which is genuinely fantastic. But for me,
there is a pay-to-win aspect. I think he knows that. I think that might have just been a bit of a misspeak, because he did mention earlier how it is a bit pay to win. I think
gameplay is just too slow to be enjoyable unless they adjust it, which they definitely still can, since it's still in its first year of being out.
I kind of agree with that. Like, obviously it could be improved, but I just don't know if it will be. One thing I will say is they did improve sprint dribbling a little bit. That was the biggest issue. It used to go from 0 to 100 miles an hour when you in the first betas. So it meant that if there was 15 yards of space between you and a defender, you actually couldn't take advantage of it, because if you press sprint, you would have went full speed and then the defender would have closed you down. Space wouldn't be there anymore and you get tackled. So you had to jog, but then if you were jogging, you're just going to get caught up by the defenders behind you. They have improved that. They reeled in the speed and the pace and made it a bit more responsive. I would like to see an analog sprint like we have in eFootball, but I guess that was one element they improved, but like they're just missing too much nimbleness in the dribbling. Like I said, it's just too unresponsive. Could be fixed. I honestly just don't have much faith in it, and it's not that I don't have faith that they could fix it. I just don't think they'd be able to fix it in time to keep the player base or grow the player base. And I just see this game shutting down in the near future. Like look at X Defiant. X Defiant was one of the most popular games in the world. I remember when it came out, they were breaking all sorts of records for players. But as someone who played X Defiant a little bit while I was playing it, I never thought about spending money on it. And it's just a case of I just never I just played it, had fun, I never even looked in the store. I never thought, okay, maybe I like this game, maybe I should spend money on it. Just didn't enter the equation. And I think that's the problem with UFL. The gameplay isn't there enough for me to want to spend on it. But even if it was, we just gone back to the pay to win aspect, because I'm not spending money on cosmetics. I don't care about cosmetics. I don't care about graphics. And I think that's going to be true for most people. They're not going to spend money on cosmetics. So if the gameplay is good enough for people to spend money on it, what are they buying? They're going to be buying pay to win cards. So I just don't see the business case for this game in the long term, and I can see it going the same way as X Defiant, in all honesty, to be honest.
Along with that, some people just genuinely enjoy slower gameplay, and if that is you, this might be something worth trying out, especially because the game is entirely free.
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the gameplay is slower but not responsive. It's two different things. But to be honest, a lot of people did like PES 20 and 21. That was unresponsive and slow, but that did have a lot of animations and it looked very good, which a lot of people, I don't care about it, but a lot of people do care about the kind of how the game looks and the authenticity. Like if you go on YouTube now and look up, I don't know, PES 21 modded gameplay, it'll look like real football. Like it'll take you a few seconds, maybe 10-15 seconds, where you're looking, this looks real, and then you'll see one animation that, okay, I can see it's a video game, but that's very impressive. That, like, someone who's played a lot of that game, a lot of football games in general, I can watch it for a while and go, this looks very realistic, and then it just takes one animation where you go, okay, there's the video game. But in UFL, you can notice it straight away. It's just not going to be, that's going to take years, and a lot of money to get to that point, which it's not going to get there. And there's no point really getting there if you don't have the licenses either.
Holy shit, you get a win if someone quits while it's tied. Never mind, best game around, actually.
Now, then you'd love eFootball, because that happens there too. So I'll leave a link to this guy's channel in the description. He actually has very good videos similar to this, just kind of like more video essay type videos on FIFA. So, you know, just a very good kind of mind on what makes a good football game. And he has a very good understanding of it too. And he also talks about real football as well. Anyway, thanks for watching. Let me know if you guys play UFL or you even have any interest in it at all, because I want it to be good, but I just don't see it really being the case.